The wind howled like a wounded beast, seeping through the cracks of the old wooden door of Cloud Mountain Cafe, a small coffee shop nestled on a hillside in the town of Dalat. This town, usually serene with its lush pine hills and rippling lakes, was now enveloped by a rare snowstorm, an unusual weather phenomenon caused by climate change, blanketing everything in thick snow, covering every path. The national highway leading into town had become a desolate wasteland, with abandoned cars scattered along the roadside like shipwrecks in a sea of ice. Ely, a 24-year-old woman with long black hair, tied neatly and eyes radiating resilience, was wiping down the bar counter with a damp cloth. Her hands, calloused from long hours of brewing coffee, washing dishes and serving customers, were still deft and quick. She wore a thin woolen sweater over the cafe's uniform, a simple white shirt with the shop's logo hand-stitched on it. Cloud Mountain Cafe was not a luxurious place. It was just a modest wooden house with a few worn tables and chairs, a bookshelf filled with old books and newspapers, and the warm, comforting aroma of hand-roasted coffee that contrasted sharply with the biting cold outside. Mr. Tum, the cafe's owner, a 70-year-old man with a white beard and a kind smile always on his lips, stood behind the kitchen counter, stirring a pot of hot porridge for a late dinner. He had lived through countless Dalat winters, but this storm genuinely worried him. His face creased as the wind shrieked, and he turned to Ely. "Ely, close up early, dear. This storm is no joke. Snow this heavy has blocked all the roads. Go home and rest, or you'll get sick." His voice was warm, like that of a true grandfather, Mr. Tom had treated Ely like his own daughter ever since she started working here 2 years ago. But Ely shook her head, a gentle but determined smile on her lips. She continued wiping down the counter, neatly stacking clean cups on the shelf. "I'll stay with you, Uncle. If someone's stranded out there, our cafe is the only place still lit up in this town. I can't bear to abandon them." Her words were sincere, but deep down, Ely had her own reasons. Her mother was in the provincial hospital, with mounting medical bills for cancer treatment. The meager salary from the cafe was her family's sole lifeline, and she couldn't afford to miss even a single shift, not even on a stormy night like this. Ely had learned to hide her worries behind a smile, and tonight was no exception. She glanced out the foggy window, hoping the storm would pass quickly but ready to face whatever it brought. The wind roared outside Cloud Mountain Cafe, carrying sharp snowflakes that pelted the glass windows, leaving blurry white streaks. Inside, the warm golden light from old hanging lamps illuminated the polished wooden floor that Ely had just cleaned. The small cafe was quiet now, with only the crackling of the fireplace in the corner and the rich scent of roasted coffee filling the air. Ely had just finished stacking a pile of clean napkins on the counter when the heavy wooden door swung open, bringing with it a gust of freezing air and a man who stepped in, carrying both snow and an air of arrogance. The man, in his mid-30s, tall and imposing, wore an expensive cashmere coat now soaked and dusted with snow. He shook his dark hair to dislodge the snow, revealing an angular face with cold gray eyes that seemed to assess everything around him. "Is this place open?" His voice was sharp, tinged with a hint of arrogance, as if he wasn't used to asking for anything. He pulled down his scarf, revealing a perfectly tailored suit jacket, now slightly crumpled from the harsh weather. Ely, standing behind the counter, wasn't fazed by the man's polished appearance. She gave a slight smile and pulled a stack of menus from the wooden shelf. "We're open, but the kitchen's about to close. What do you need?" Her voice was calm, professional, but carried a hint of caution. In her 2 years working at the cafe, she had dealt with all kinds of customers, from curious tourists to demanding locals, and she knew how to handle people like this man, who seemed to view the place as a temporary inconvenience. Before the man could respond, the door swung open again, this time admitting a group of equally well-dressed people. In total, there were 12 of them, 8 men and 4 women filing in with snow and weary sighs. A young woman with blonde hair tied in a high ponytail, wearing an expensive fur coat, looked around the cafe with clear disappointment. "What is this place? Some shack in the middle of nowhere?" she muttered, but still pulled out a chair to sit. An older man with silver hair and a gleaming gold watch shook his head. "No other choice, Lon. The highway's completely blocked. Our cars can't go any further." Ely quickly counted heads, realizing this wasn't an ordinary group of customers. They looked like they had just stepped out of a high-profile conference in Saigon or Hanoi, with their designer suits, dresses, and the demeanor of people accustomed to prompt service. She exchanged a glance with Mr. Tom, who stood at the kitchen door, still holding a ladle for the porridge. He gave a slight nod, signaling her to carry on, though both knew the cafe wasn't equipped to handle such a large group so close to closing time. The first man, still standing near the counter, spoke up. "I'm Mark, CEO of Van Thon Real Estate Group." He said it as if his name should make Ely flinch or show deference. When she only nodded and replied, "Hello, Mr. Mark. I'm Ely. Welcome to Cloud Mountain Cafe." His brows furrowed, clearly unused to his name failing to impress. "We need a place to stay for the night," he continued, his voice tinged with impatience. "The roads are blocked, phones have no signal, and the nearest hotel is miles away." Ely nodded, not letting on that she had anticipated this situation. "The highway's closed, right? Uncle Tom, do you think the heater in the storage room still works?" She turned to Mr. Tom, who had just stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. With decades of experience in Dalat, Mr. Tom nodded. "It's still working fine. But this isn't a five-star hotel, so please bear with us. We have blankets, couches, and hot coffee. Sit down, and Ely and I will take care of you." The group exchanged skeptical glances. A younger man with tousled hair and gold-rimmed glasses gave an awkward laugh. "You mean we're supposed to sleep here? On couches?" Ely, unfazed by his tone, responded with a slight smile. "Better than sleeping in a car in a snowstorm, sir. It's below zero out there, and the forecast says the storm will last until morning." She began pouring coffee into white ceramic cups, her movements swift and practiced, as if she had done this 1,000 times, which she had. As Ely distributed the coffee, she observed the group. They were clearly successful people, likely entrepreneurs or investors, unaccustomed to being stuck in a place like Cloud Mountain Cafe. A woman with short, red-dyed hair and a business dress was trying to wipe snow off her high heels, muttering about an important meeting in Saigon. Another man, with a deep northern accent, complained about the lack of phone signal. "I have $1 million contract to sign tomorrow morning. This is a disaster." Mark, still standing near the counter, looked at Ely with a curious expression. "You're not charging for the coffee? In a situation like this?" His tone was both intrigued and suspicious, as if free kindness was unthinkable. Ely paused, meeting his gaze. "This is hospitality, Mr. Mark. It's not something to be calculated. If you want food, we have hot porridge and bread. It's not a 5-star menu, but it'll keep you warm through the night." Her words silenced the group for a moment, leaving only the sound of the howling wind outside. Mark, for the first time that night, gave a slight, genuine smile, not the smug grin of a CEO, but one that suggested he had realized something new. "You're really something else," he said, almost under his breath. Ely just shrugged, returning to her work, but she could feel Mark's eyes following her, as if he were trying to unravel a mystery she had unwittingly revealed. The snowstorm outside Cloud Mountain Cafe raged on, as if intent on swallowing the entire town of Dalat. The wind whistled through the window cracks, carrying a bone-chilling cold. But inside the cafe, the atmosphere grew warmer, not just from the glowing fireplace, but also from the quiet hospitality of Ely and Mr. Tom. The soft golden light from the hanging lamps cast shadows on the wooden walls, blending with the scent of roasted coffee and the rustic aroma of burning firewood. The cafe, though small and simple, had become a sanctuary for the 12 guests, wealthy business people accustomed to luxurious boardrooms and 5-star hotels, now facing the unfamiliar reality of a stormy night in the highlands. Ely moved between the tables, carrying a pot of hot coffee, refilling the white ceramic cups she had cleaned earlier. She worked with the ease of someone accustomed to the cafe's rhythm, but her eyes were always watchful, noticing signs of discomfort, anxiety, or even confusion among the guests. She knew they weren't used to this, being stranded in a small cafe with no phone signal, no modern amenities, and no way back to the world they controlled. But instead of letting their tension affect her, Ely kept a gentle smile, reassuring both them and herself. From the kitchen, Mr. Tom brought out a tray of freshly baked bread and a steaming pot of chicken porridge. "This is all we have, so please bear with us," he said in his warm, steady voice, setting the tray on the large table where the group had gathered. "It's not fancy, but it'll keep you warm through the night." He glanced at Ely, his eyes tinged with pride at how naturally she handled the situation. Mr. Tom had seen many harsh winters in Dalat, but he knew tonight was special not just because of the storm, but because of the people fate had brought here. The group, initially distant and irritated, began to relax. Mr. Long, the older man with silver hair and a gleaming gold watch, held a bowl of porridge, savoring its aroma. "Young lady, this porridge is really good." It's been a long time since I've had something so simple, he said sincerely. Ely smiled, replying, "Thank you, sir. It's Uncle Tom's recipe. He makes the best chicken porridge in town." Mr. Long laughed heartily, a rare sound in the tense atmosphere. "If I'd known about this place sooner, I'd have come by more often." Lan, the young woman with blonde hair and an expensive fur coat, who had initially been grumpy, now sipped her coffee, her irritation fading. "I have to admit, this coffee is better than some fancy places in Saigon," she said, her tone still a bit haughty but softer. "How do you roast it to make it smell so good?" Ely, stacking more blankets on a couch, turned to answer, "It's not me, it's Uncle Tom. He picks beans from local farms and roasts them by hand. Every batch is his pride and joy." Lan nodded, as if weighing whether to believe Ely, but she took another sip, clearly satisfied. Meanwhile, Mark, sitting at a corner table by the window, watched everything with sharp eyes. He didn't join much in the group's conversation, but his gaze often lingered on Ely. There was something about her calmness, her sincerity, and the way she handled the situation without being swayed by the group's wealth or power that intrigued him. He sipped his coffee, realizing it wasn't just delicious but carried a warmth and familiarity he rarely found in Saigon's upscale restaurants. "You really put your heart into this work," he said, his voice low but clear enough for Ely to hear from the counter. Ely turned, slightly surprised that Mark spoke again. "It's just my job, Mr. Mark. If I don't do it well, customers won't come back," she replied lightly, with a hint of humor. Mark smiled, this time a genuine one, not the polite smile he used in business meetings. "I bet your customers come back for more than just the coffee," he said, making Ely pause for a second before turning away, pretending to be busy, rearranging napkins. The atmosphere in the cafe gradually shifted. The guests, used to giving orders and being served instantly, began to open up. Fong, the young man with gold-rimmed glasses, told a funny story about getting stuck at an airport due to a missed flight, making the group laugh. Huang, the woman with short, red-dyed hair, still worried about a missed online meeting, shared the pressures of running a tech startup. "People think being a boss is glamorous, but I just want to sleep without emails haunting me," she said, and for the first time she gave a genuine smile. Ely, while serving more porridge, listened to their stories. She didn't join in much, but her presence, quietly refilling coffee, checking the fireplace to keep everyone warm, made the space feel more intimate. Mr. Tom, from the kitchen, added to the mood by sharing stories of the cafe's early days, when he and his wife had to chop wood, roast coffee, and even learn to bake bread from a French friend. "It was tough back then, but joyful. Now, with Ely's help, the cafe has survived winters like this," he said, his eyes twinkling as he looked at her. Another man, Mr. Hoa, with a warm Central Vietnamese accent, spoke up unexpectedly. "Ely, you remind me of my daughter. She's stubborn too, refusing to leave our hometown despite my urging her to work in the city." Ely smiled, setting a bowl of porridge in front of him. "I think staying in the hometown is good, sir. Sometimes, small places are where we find meaning." Her simple words made Mr. Hoa pause, as if reflecting on something deeper. Mark, still watching from his corner, felt a change within himself. He was used to transactional conversations, people talking to him for money, power, or his support. But here, in a small cafe amidst a storm, he found himself speaking as an ordinary person. He shared a story from his college days, when he fell asleep in the library and was kicked out by security at midnight. The story made the group laugh loudly, and for the first time in years, Mark felt a sense of relief, as if he didn't need to maintain his CEO facade. Ely, while clearing dishes, realized that these guests, despite their wealth and power, were just people trying to get through a tough night. She watched them, once distant, now laughing and sharing personal stories, and felt a warmth in her heart. But she also knew this was a fleeting moment. When the storm cleared, they would return to their world, and she would continue her life, burdened by hospital bills and unfulfilled dreams. Yet, when her eyes met Mark's, she felt something unfamiliar, a connection she wasn't ready to name. In the warm golden light of Cloud Mountain Cafe, the guests' laughter and stories mingled with the howling wind outside. The fireplace crackled, its warmth seeping into every corner, melting away some of the initial distance between these strangers. Ely moved between tables, bringing more hot porridge and bread, her hands swift but her eyes observant, noting each guest's expressions. They, wealthy business people, seemed less tense now, as if the cafe's warmth and Ely's hospitality had eased their frustration at being stranded. Mark, at his corner table by the window, kept his eyes on Ely. The arrogance he had when he first entered was gone, replaced by genuine curiosity. As Ely set a fresh cup of coffee before him, he spoke up, his voice low but clear. "How long have you been working here, Ely? Do you plan to go somewhere bigger, or stay in this small town forever?" His question carried a probing tone, as if he were trying to understand her beyond the surface of a coffee shop worker. Ely paused, still holding the coffee pot, her eyes flicking to Mark for a moment before she answered, "2 years, Mr. Mark. I'm here for my mother, for this cafe. Nothing special to tell." Her voice was soft, but there was a guarded quality to it, as if she were erecting an invisible wall. The truth was, Ely wasn't just a cafe worker. She was once Nguyen Thuy Linh, an outstanding student at the National Economics University in Hanoi, with a bright future ahead until her family collapsed under a scandalous bankruptcy. 3 years ago, her family's coffee export company was manipulated into debt by a business partner, Hoang. Her father, unable to bear the shock, died of a heart attack, and her mother fell into depression, later diagnosed with cancer. Ely, then just 21, left Hanoi, changed her name, and came to Dalat to start over, working to pay hospital bills while escaping her painful past. Mark, with the keenness of someone used to reading business partners, sensed something in Ely's eyes, a fleeting sadness, an untold story. "You don't seem like someone who'd be content brewing coffee forever," he said, his tone gentle but pointed. "I bet you have bigger dreams than this." Ely smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Everyone has dreams, sir, but sometimes life decides for you." She turned away, carrying an empty tray to the kitchen, avoiding Mark's gaze. Inside, a wave of emotions surged, memories of her days in Hanoi, confident presentations in class, dreams of working for an international organization. All that was now a closed book, leaving only her, the cafe, and her duty to her mother. Mr. Tom, from the kitchen, noticed the slight change in Ely's expression. He stepped out, placing a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "You okay, dear? Don't let these guests make you overthink." Ely nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, Uncle Tom. They just remind me of some old things." Mr. Tom, with the wisdom of someone who had lived through many ups and downs, didn't press further. He only patted her shoulder, a reminder that she wasn't alone. But as Ely resumed serving, Mark's gaze followed her, and she sensed he saw something she didn't want, revealed a hidden wound, a secret she had buried deep. Meanwhile, the guests began sharing their own stories. Mr. Long recounted his first visit to Dalat 30 years ago, when he was a young man dreaming of starting a coffee farm. Lan, the blonde woman, admitted she was exhausted by the pressure of running her tech company, despite her outward confidence. These stories, though different, shared a common thread: the weariness of those constantly in the spotlight of power and success. Ely listened, not commenting, but she realized that, no matter how wealthy they were just people seeking a moment of peace in the storm like her. As the night grew late, Ely brought out more blankets from the storage room, arranging couches into makeshift beds for the guests. She checked the fireplace, ensuring it burned steadily to keep everyone warm. Mark, standing to help her spread the blankets, said unexpectedly, "You remind me of an old friend. She was strong like you, but always hid what she really thought." Ely looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "What happened to her?" she asked softly. Mark shrugged, his eyes tinged with sadness. "She left without a word. I always wondered what I did wrong." Ely didn't respond, but his words touched a deep part of her, where she too had left everything behind without explanation. Dawn finally broke, bringing faint light through the thick fog surrounding Cloud Mountain Cafe. The snowstorm, though calmer, had left a thick layer of snow covering the highway and surrounding hills, turning Dalat into a white canvas. Inside the cafe, the atmosphere remained warm, but now carried the quiet of a long night past. The guests, after sleeping on couches and the wooden floor, began to stir, stretching and exchanging sleepy remarks. Ely, having only napped for a few hours on a chair in the kitchen corner, was up early, brewing fresh coffee and preparing a simple batch of toasted bread for breakfast. She stood behind the counter, looking out the large window where weak sunlight tried to pierce the snow-covered glass. She felt tired, but also a sense of relief. She and Mr. Tom had helped 12 strangers through a harsh night, and that small act brought her a bit of joy. However, when she heard the sound of engines in the distance, she frowned. The noise grew louder, and when she opened the door to look, she could hardly believe her eyes. A convoy of luxury cars, at least 100, from sleek SUVs to chrome-plated sedans, lined the narrow road to the cafe. Drivers, staff, and even a few local reporters spilled out, carrying cameras and phones, turning Cloud Mountain Cafe into the center of attention. Mr. Tum, standing beside Ely, gave a soft whistle. "Well, this is livelier than a Tet market." He chuckled, but Ely sensed his unease. Their cafe had never faced such a crowd. She glanced back at the guests, now standing, adjusting their clothes and preparing to leave. Lan, the blonde woman, had regained her confidence, checking her phone as the signal returned. "Finally some reception," she said, relieved. Mr. Long, tying his scarf, turned to Ely. "Young lady, thank you, and Mr. Tum. Last night was memorable." He handed her a business card, smiling. "If you need anything, call me. I owe you a proper meal." Mark, still by the window, approached Ely, holding a cold cup of coffee. "You definitely made last night more bearable than we deserved," he said sincerely. Ely only nodded, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to attention, and Mark's gaze, curious yet warm, made her feel slightly uneasy. "Just doing my job, Mr. Mark," she said, turning to clear a table, hiding the feeling that he was seeing deeper into her, as if he knew she was hiding something. As the group left, leaving thanks and generous tips, Ely and Mr. Tum began cleaning the cafe. But the peace didn't last long. Within hours, the small town buzzed with activity. News of the coffee shop girl who kept the cafe open during the storm to help a group of wealthy business people spread like wildfire. Local reporters, then journalists from Saigon, arrived with cameras and microphones. A woman with a microphone bearing a local TV station's logo approached Ely, asking, "You're the one who helped the business people last night, right? Can you tell us the story?" Ely, flustered by the camera, replied briefly, "I just did what needed to be done. Our cafe is always open to those who need help." But her simple response only fueled the attention. By noon, Cloud Mountain Cafe was packed not just with curious locals, but also tourists from afar, drawn by the story and eager to try the famous snowstorm coffee. Mr. Tum, though tired, couldn't hide his smile as the cash register filled. "Ely, see that? This storm might be a blessing in disguise," he said, his voice laced with humor. But Ely wasn't so sure. The sudden attention made her feel stifled, as if a spotlight was shining on a part of her life she had tried to keep hidden. She worried that if the media dug deeper, they might uncover that she was once Nguyen Tui Lin, exposing the past she had buried. While cleaning, Ely found a business card on the table where Mark had Saturday. Alongside the Van Than logo was a handwritten note. "Thank you for last night. If you need anything, call me, Mark." Below was his personal phone number. Ely held the card, her fingers tracing the words, torn between curiosity and caution. She didn't know if it was just a polite gesture or a sign of something more. But as she looked out at the now cleared road, where the luxury cars had gone, she wondered if that stormy night had truly ended or was just the start of another storm in her life. 3 weeks after the historic snowstorm, Cloud Mountain Cafe had become a famous destination in Dalat. From a little-known spot, it was now bustling, with lines of people waiting to try snowstorm coffee and take check-in photos. News of Ely and Mr. Tum's hospitality, opening their cafe during the storm to help wealthy business people, had spread across social media, from Instagram posts to major news outlets. Photos of the cafe during the storm, its golden lights glowing amidst the white snow, became a symbol of kindness in tough times. But for Ely, this sudden fame was a double-edged sword. It brought the revenue needed for her mother's hospital bills, but also made her feel like she was living under a spotlight where any mistake could be scrutinized. That morning, Ely stood behind the counter, swiftly brewing coffee for a group of young tourists. She wore the familiar white shirt, her hair tied high, but her eyes showed exhaustion. The past weeks, she and Mr. Tum had worked double to keep up with the influx of customers, leaving her little time to rest. Mr. Tum, still wearing his kind smile, was slowing down due to age and joint pain. "Ely, take a break. You've been at it since morning," he called from the kitchen, where he was preparing more bread. Ely gave a faint smile, replying, "I'm fine, Uncle Tum. Let me handle the counter, you rest." The cafe door swung open, bringing a cool morning breeze. Ely looked up to greet the customer as usual, but froze when she recognized the man stepping in. Mark, the man who had led the group of business people during the storm, stood at the threshold, but he looked different this time. Instead of an expensive suit, he wore a deep green sweater and dark jeans, more casual but still exuding his characteristic confidence. His gray eyes scanned the cafe, landing on Ely, and a gentle smile appeared. "I came back for the coffee," he said, his voice tinged with humor, but his eyes hinted at something deeper. Ely, wiping a cup, tried to stay composed despite her heart beating faster. "I've got coffee, Mr. Mark," she replied, keeping her tone professional. "But if you want to talk, I'm pretty busy." She gestured toward the waiting customers, emphasizing she had no time for idle chatter. But Mark didn't leave. He pulled a chair to a quiet corner of the counter and sat, clearly intending to wait. "I'm patient," he said softly but firmly. "Do your work. I just want a coffee, and maybe a chat, if you'll let me." Ely frowned, unsure if this was sincerity or just a game from a wealthy man bored with his life. She brewed a black coffee, set it before him and said, "Here's your coffee. But if you're gonna ask something like you did during the storm, my answer's still the same." Mark smiled, sipped the coffee, and nodded. "As good as that night. But I'm not here to pry about you. I'm here because that night changed how I see things." His words made Ely pause, her hand still holding the cloth. She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of pretense, but found only sincerity rare for someone like Mark, who she assumed solved problems with money and power. "Changed how?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper, as if afraid his answer would pull her into something she wasn't ready for. Mark leaned forward, setting down his cup. "That night, you and Mr. Tom did something no one in my world would do. Opened your doors to strangers, asking for nothing, expecting nothing. You didn't know who we were, yet you treated us like regular people, not names on business cards. It made me rethink how I live, how I treat others." He paused, his eyes fixed on her. "You made me want to be a better version of myself, Ely." His words touched a deep, locked-away part of Ely's heart. She wanted to believe him, but past experiences, sweet promises from those who betrayed her, made her wary. "You talk a good game," she said, her voice soft but sharp. "But I'm just a coffee shop girl, Mr. Mark. Don't turn me into a life lesson." She turned to serve another customer, but her heart pounded, torn between trust and self-protection. Mark didn't leave. He stayed for an hour, sipping coffee, watching Ely work with the dedication and grace he couldn't help but admire. When the cafe quieted, he stood, leaving a generous tip and saying, "I'll be back, Ely. Not just for the coffee, but because I think we could talk about more than this." Ely didn't respond, only nodding slightly, but as he left, she held the tip and the business card from before, feeling a wave of indescribable emotions. She wondered if Mark was truly different, or just another rich man looking for a new story to tell. That afternoon, Cloud Mountain Cafe was as crowded as ever, with tourists and locals packed in to enjoy coffee and hear about the snowstorm girl story. Ely, though used to the attention, still felt stifled. She stood behind the counter, making an iced coffee, trying to focus on work to forget her morning encounter with Mark. His words echoed in her mind, his sincerity, his gaze that seemed to see through her. But she reminded herself she had no time for such things, not with her mother in the hospital and the cafe needing her more than ever. The door swung open, bringing a cold breeze. A tall man in a black leather jacket stepped in, his slicked back hair and smug smile unsettling. Ely didn't recognize him at first, but as he approached the counter, his deep, familiar voice froze her. "Nguyen Tui Lin," he said, his tone mocking. "I never thought I'd find you in a place like this." Ely felt the blood drain from her face. It was Huang, her family's former business partner, who had manipulated and bankrupted their coffee export company 3 years ago. His actions not only stripped her family of their wealth, but also ruined the lives of dozens of employees and led to her father's fatal heart attack. Ely gripped the counter, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I'm Ely, you've got the wrong person," she said, but her voice trembled slightly, and Huang noticed. He laughed coldly, a sound that made her shiver. "Don't play dumb, Thuy Lin. You think changing your name and hiding in this little cafe would erase your past? I recognized you the moment I saw that article about the snowstorm girl. You sure know how to stand out, don't you?" At that moment, Mark, who had returned to retrieve a forgotten scarf, stood at the threshold, overhearing the conversation. He frowned, stepping closer to the counter, his eyes shifting from Ely to Hoang. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice low but with a sharp edge from someone used to handling tense situations. Hoang turned, recognizing Mark, his smile growing more arrogant. "Oh, Mark, CEO of Van Than. What a coincidence. Do you know this girl? Or has she fooled you with her poor coffee shop girl act?" Ely felt the floor beneath her crumble. She looked at Mark, her eyes filled with worry, but she said nothing. Mark, with his sharp instincts, sensed a larger story unfolding. "I don't care who she was before," he said firmly, stepping beside Ely as if to shield her. "But I know she's the one who helped me and our group through a stormy night. Who are you to talk to her like that?" Hoang smirked, unfazed. "Ask her, Mark. Ask who Nguyen Thuy Linh, daughter of the Nguyen Gia coffee empire, used to be. Ask why she's hiding here, pretending to be a waitress when her family once owned an empire." He turned to Ely, his voice dripping with malice. "You thought I wouldn't find out? You ran away after your father's company collapsed, leaving your mother and everyone else to deal with the fallout. You think you can start over without anyone noticing?" Ely's throat tightened, painful memories flooding back like a tidal wave. She wanted to shout that Hoang had manipulated contracts and faked numbers to drive her family's company into debt, but no words came. Instead, she said, her voice trembling but resolute, "Get out of here, Hoang. I don't want to hear another word from you." She turned, hurrying to the small garden behind the cafe, fighting back tears. Mark watched her go, then faced Hoang. "You heard her. Get out and don't come back," he said, his voice cold as steel. Hoang shrugged, tossing back. "She's not worth your time, Mark. Just a failure pretending to be good." He left, leaving a tense air in the cafe. Mr. Tom, who had witnessed everything from the kitchen, stepped out, his eyes worried. "Is Ely okay, Mark?" he asked. Mark shook his head. "I don't know, but I'll find her." He stepped into the garden behind the cafe, where Ely stood, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the misty hills. Her eyes were red, but she tried to stay strong. "You don't have to explain anything," Mark said, standing a few steps away, his voice gentle but firm. "But if you want to, I'm here to listen." Ely turned, looking into his eyes, and for the first time, she felt an urge to share, not because she fully trusted him, but because she was tired of carrying her secret alone. But she only said, "I'm not who you think I am. I was someone else once, and I lost everything. I don't want you to see me as a puzzle to solve." Mark stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I don't care who you used to be, Ely. I know you as the woman who opened the cafe during a storm, who made me feel human for the first time in years. If you have a past, it's just a part of you, not the whole you." His words stirred a mix of relief and fear in Ely. She wasn't sure if she should trust him, but his earnest eyes made her want to try, even just a little. The small garden behind Cloud Mountain Cafe, where Ely often came to find calm, was bathed in the soft light of a Dalat afternoon. The green pines swayed in the breeze, and light mist drifted by, as if hiding the emotions swirling in her heart. Ely stood alone, arms around her shoulders, staring at the foggy hills. The unexpected encounter with Hoang, who had destroyed her family's life 3 years ago, felt like being dragged back to a past she had tried to bury under a new name and a simple life in Dalat. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks, but she quickly wiped them away, unwilling to let anyone see her vulnerability. Mark stepped out from the wooden door leading to the garden, his leather shoes crunching softly on the gravel path. He stopped a few steps away, not wanting to invade her space, but his eyes were full of concern and determination. "Ely," he called softly, his voice deep and sincere, "you don't have to face this alone." Ely turned, her red eyes still trying to hold a strong front. "You don't understand, Mr. Mark," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Hoang isn't just a stranger. He destroyed my family, took everything we had, and now he shows up, as if to remind me I can't hide forever." Mark stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I heard what Hoang said, about you being Nguyen Thuy Linh, about your family's company, but I don't care about his words. I want to hear it from you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Why didn't you tell me? Why hide your past?" Ely took a deep breath, her throat tightening. She had kept this secret for so long, and now, standing before Mark, who seemed to genuinely care, she felt an urge to share, even just a part. "I didn't hide to deceive anyone," she began, her voice low but clear. "I hid because I was afraid you, or anyone, would see me differently. Afraid they'd see me as a failure, the daughter of a once wealthy family who lost everything. Hoang, he was my father's business partner. He manipulated contracts, faked numbers, and drove our company into debt. My father couldn't handle it. He died of a heart attack. My mother fell into depression, then was diagnosed with cancer. I left Hanoi, changed my name, came here to start over, so my mother wouldn't see me fail again." She stopped, turning away, fighting fresh tears. I don't want you to think I'm using you, or that my story is just for pity." Mark was silent for a moment, processing her words. Then he stepped forward, standing right before her, his voice gentle but firm. "Ely, I don't see you as a failure. I see you as a strong woman who opened her cafe during a storm, who works tirelessly for her mother. Your past doesn't define you. And if Huang hurt your family, I'll help you seek justice." His eyes lit up with a determination Ely hadn't seen before. "I'm not making empty promises, but I have resources, connections. I'll find out what Huang did, and if he's guilty, he'll pay." Ely looked into Mark's eyes, searching for any sign of deceit, but found only sincerity. For the first time in years, she felt someone truly wanted to stand by her. But she was also afraid confronting Huang would reopen old wounds, afraid she'd lose the peace she had built in Dalat. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, almost whispering. "You don't owe me anything." Mark smiled, a sad but warm smile. "Because you showed me what really matters, Ely. In my world, people always want something: money, power, fame. But you gave without asking for anything. I want to help you, not because I owe you, but because I want to believe I can be a better person, like you've shown me." His words sent a warmth into Ely's heart, but she wasn't fully ready to trust. She nodded, saying nothing more, but inside, a small spark of hope flickered. They returned to the cafe, where Mr. Tom was cleaning the counter. He looked at Ely, his eyes worried, but when she gave a slight nod, he smiled, as if knowing she'd be okay. Mark stayed a bit longer, chatting with Mr. Tam about the cafe's early days, but his eyes always drifted to Ely. When he left a short note on a piece of paper. "I'll be back soon. Trust me." Ely held the note, feeling a mix of hope and doubt, but she knew that no matter what, she wouldn't let Huang or her past dictate her future. 6 months later, Cloud Mountain Cafe was no longer just a small shop on a Dalat hillside. With Mark's financial and advisory support, Ely and Mr. Tom had turned it into a small chain, with 3 new locations in nearby towns. Each cafe carried the rustic, warm charm of the original, with wooden walls, old bookshelves, and the scent of hand-roasted coffee. But what made them stand out was their story. A young woman and a cafe owner who opened their doors during a storm to help strangers, and how that kindness rippled, changing not just their lives but their community. Ely stood in the garden behind the original cafe, now transformed into an outdoor space with small wooden tables and hanging lanterns that glowed at night. She wore a green sweater, her long hair loose, and a light smile on her face, no longer weighed down. Her mother, after months of treatment, was recovering better than expected, and Ely finally felt she could breathe again. The cafe not only provided steady income, but became a symbol of resilience and kindness, drawing tourists and locals alike. Mark, now an integral part of Ely's life, stood beside her, holding a coffee cup. He had changed much since that stormy night, no longer the cold man focused only on profit and power. He had used his connections to investigate Huang, uncovering shady deals that had destroyed Ely's family's company. With a team of lawyers, Mark helped Ely bring the case to light. Huang was investigated for financial fraud, and Ely's family's reputation, especially her father's, was restored. A major newspaper ran a story calling Ely the woman who rose from ashes, but she only laughed, telling Mark, "I don't need the press. I just need my mother to be well, and this cafe to stay open." The relationship between Ely and Mark, which began with hesitant conversations, had blossomed into a deep love. They took their time, both carrying scars from the past, and grew to understand each other. Mark visited Dalat often, not just to help manage the cafe chain, but to be with Ely. He learned to roast coffee from Mr. Tom, though he admitted he was only good at ruining beans. Ely, in turn, opened up, sharing dreams she thought had died, dreams of furthering her education, of building a coffee brand that supported local farmers. One peaceful evening, as the garden lanterns glowed under a starry sky, Mark took Ely's hand, pulling her close. "I used to think I had everything," he said, his voice warm, his eyes shining in the dim light. "Money, power, fame. But you showed me those mean nothing compared to being here, with you, in a place like this." Ely smiled, for the first time free of doubt. "Sometimes, a storm doesn't just bring hardship," she replied softly but surely. "It brings miracles, like how it brought you to me." They stood hand in hand, looking up at Dalat's starry sky, where the stars twinkled like promises of a bright future. Cloud Mountain Cafe, now a beacon of hope, remained lit, welcoming everyone from strangers to close friends. Ely knew life would always have challenges, But with Mark by her side, Mr. Tum still sharing old stories, and her own resilient heart, she was ready to face any storm that came next. The garden, the cafe, and their love were proof that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected moments.